Have you gone downtown and just tried to hang out for a night and how expensive it is to park
It
and
is
how
expensive.
dirty it is and it's not kept up? I mean,
I will literally say mic drop after that. All right, so Project Marvel, it's a $4 billion project. Now, before I tell you what I think about it, let's go over the details, see what kind of thoughts you come up with, and let me know in the comments. I'm kind of curious. Let's use the comments as a discussion. I can kind of see both sides of it, but I'm kind of leaning one way. Let me know what you think. All right, so yesterday the city unveiled Project Marvel, which is a $4 billion project, downtown sports district. Would include a new Spurs arena. So again, it's a $4 billion downtown project. And here's what it includes. The plan includes construction of a new Spurs arena and renovations to the aging Alamo Dome. It calls for adding 150,000 square feet to the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center, building a new 20,000 square foot University of Texas at San Antonio School of Hospitality, and turning the empty John H. Wood Federal Courthouse into a 5,000 seat concert venue. It would also erect another convention center hotel, adding 1,000 more hotel rooms downtown. And this is kind of what the timeline is. Everything in blue is 1 to 5 years out. Everything in this red color is 5 to 15 years out. Now, this reporter said that all the city staff did not provide a cost estimate for the Spurs arena and the Alamo Dome reservations. Fox SA reported Wednesday the two projects would have a combined $2.6 billion price tag. All right, now let's watch a video by the city of San Antonio selling us on the project, or at least on the vision of the project.
San Antonio is the heart of Texas, but the soul comes from its people. It is time to showcase the rich history and diverse cultural heritage of San Antonio on a global scale. Time to usher in the next generation of sports, technology, and entertainment in Texas. Imagine the activation of 4 community parks, woven through some of the most iconic buildings.
All right, real quick. When they say activation, they mean creating programs around, having something to do at the park, right? Because when you go to the park, there's nothing going on. So anytime you hear any economic development person or city planner say activation, what they're really saying is, all right, how can we have events at these parks?
In San Antonio, an immersive, free, and accessible experience, allowing visitors and locals.
All right, so here what they're saying is there's these 4 city parks, and we want to add or modernize some other things on there that are going to create events so that people are going to want to go out here. You know, it's you got to have a destination. You got to have a reason for going there. Most folks don't just go to the park, just go to the park. You kind of have a reason to be there. What they're talking about here is right here is the convention center expansion, the UTSA School of Hospitality, reimagine Alamo Dome, and then a mixed use and retail here, and then a live performance venue. I guess that's that old wood building there.
To connect with the culture of our community. A connection that will reknit the city fabric and bring communities together. A vibrant urban development that combines entertainment, dining, retail, and residential space into a world-class destination, all with our San Antonio charm. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to give our fans...
I always say that, once in a lifetime, but how many once in a lifetimes have we had? There always seems to be another once in a lifetime.
Visitors, and most important...
Keep in mind, at one point, they probably said the Alamo Dome was a once in a lifetime project.
Our community members, an experience that will live on for generations. No city in the country can offer the range of experiences and opportunities in one place. From the Final Four, college football playoffs, and the World Cup, to beloved local events such as Dia de los Muertos and Fiesta. Let this be the catalyst to draw our next generations together and transform the future of San Antonio.
All right, so let me give you my take on it real quick. Again, their position, I mean, this is an economic development project, and they're saying, hey, just look at all the dollars it's going to bring in. $4 billion. The $4 billion project that we're going to have to get debt out, right? We're going to have to issue bonds or something. We're in a high interest rate environment. We're probably going to be in a high interest rate environment for a while. So what's going to be the carrying cost on that? All right. So the annual debt service on $4 billion debt, let's just say a 4% interest rate for 10 years, it's approximately $493 million per year. So right there, roughly $500 million is your break even. So you're going to have to generate over $500 million of value every year. And to me, this is the tough part because life doesn't give you what you want, it gives you options, right? So what could we use $500 million for? One vision is a new sports park, downtown, huge structure. I don't know what else to call it. And some of you are going to say, yeah, that's perfect. It's cheap. Others might look at this and say, wow, that's a lot. That might be too much. All right, and the folks over at Sneakers and Cleats actually did a pretty good breakdown. Let's listen to this.
Debuted and unveiled today at San Antonio City Council. Don Harris in between shows joining us on the News 4 side. Chuck Migatinick joining us on the Fox SA side. Me, I was at council today and got to hear everyone's gripes and I guess happiness with it. So let's get into it, guys. No pleasantries needed. We all saw each other on Monday, so I think we're all good. So Project Marvel laid out today by Eric Walsh, the San Antonio city manager, Lori Houston, the assistant city manager, Mayor Ron Nirenberg, mayor of San Antonio, and basically it's a $3 to $4 billion entertainment and sports district in downtown San Antonio. The ITC is basically where the Spurs Arena will be. Luis, you can go ahead and throw up that VO if you want. This is an artist rendering of it. It's certainly impressive. You guys, I want you to get your initial thoughts on it before we get into some of the questions that I think the presentation today still left behind. Don, I'll start with you since we're kind of on a time crunch with you.
Well, I don't think it surprises anybody, right? I think we knew that all of these elements were happening. The ITC had been sold by UTSA or is in the works, and they're working on demolishing it this spring, and everybody knew this was going to happen. It's been kind of behind closed doors on the actual details of it, and I didn't know certain aspects of it. I didn't know about the John Wood courthouse becoming a theater. I thought the land bridge, I'd heard rumblings of that, but that was ambitious. To see it all in an artist rendering about what the future could look like is breathtaking. I don't think anybody looks at that and says, wow, that's not very good or not very ambitious. And that's what we were told going into this thing. That's what I was told over the last couple of days. So people told me, wait till you see it. You're not going to be disappointed. You're not going to say, wow, they didn't go big enough. And it's true. They went big. And I don't know that all of it will be completed. It's 9 different separate projects. And that could mean 9 different separate funding models. And that could be so many different things. But I'm pretty confident that the convention center and the Spurs Arena get built. And even if the dome renovation doesn't end up looking like that, even if the John Wood Theater doesn't.
One thing to take into account, I know they're talking about $4 billion project now, but construction cost goes up every year, right? So we're talking 1 to 5 years and then 5 to 15 years. The costs are going to be way north of $4 billion because every year, the longer you wait to build something, the costs just keep going up.
Doesn't happen. I do feel confident those first 2 major pieces can and will get done.
Chuck?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the specs for this, it is something to behold, right? I mean, I know my first impression was, wow, that's amazing. Sign me up for that right now, right? But now we got to look and see, okay, this is a bold, ambitious plan. It's going to completely reshape downtown and take San Antonio through the next 2 decades, assuming it all comes to pass. And now, what is it going to look like? How do we get there? How does this go from just being a bunch of plans on a piece of paper to now getting all the finances in order to get something like this to happen? So, I have a lot of questions too, just like a lot of people on this. And, it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes together because there's not a lot of talk about the finances right now, right? Today was just a presentation. This is what it looks like. Right. So, how can you make a judgment on whether you think this is going to do this or this is going to happen? It's almost impossible, as I sit here for me, to be able to weigh in on one side and down the other. I mean, if some of this has been done behind the scenes with a lot of non-disclosure agreements or behind the scenes, we've heard rumblings, but in terms of publicly, how is this going to look? And then the ask at some point is believed to be that they're going to go to the taxpayer and ask to foot at least a portion of this monstrosity, right? Is there going to be an appetite for that? Like there was in 99 when they were building the AT&T Center. I have no idea. I mean, this is literally like first day of Christmas, you get to open your toy. Now you get to see if you can make the toy work and go.
Yeah, and I want to take it at face value first. Just looking at the renderings and whatnot, I think none of us knew the scope of the project. We didn't know exactly that they were going to build a hole in the Alamo Dome. It was just like the artist rendering definitely takes you aback. When you look at the projects by themselves, all of them make sense separately. But my question to the mayor today was, why did we have to do all these together? Why were we waiting until now to unveil everything? And it was mainly, the answer was, we wanted everyone to see the vision for what San Antonio not is, but can be. And it's one of the most historic cities in the Union. It's one of the most populated cities in the country. And I don't think anybody really looked at San Antonio that way. There's a reason that we're not a top 30 media market. It's because we don't have some of these things. So when you put the vision together, it makes a lot of sense. When you really start to delve into it and ask yourself, how does this get done? I think that's where some of the minutia and you start losing some people. Is it the Spurs Arena that's done first? Is it the convention center that's done first?
I think you raise a good point. I love San Antonio, love the people, and it is a truly historic city. Probably one of the oldest cities in the country. I'm not sure how this vision and these projects pay homage to that. I'm not sure how it focuses on that. It almost seems like it just, it's almost like taking a nice historic Spanish mission and just putting up a strip mall over it. That's kind of what this vision looks like to me, at least.
versus the Alamo Dome. How do you shut down 281 and 37 right there to build this land bridge that goes over the top and connects the two? It's all of those things that I think are still being lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it's the convention center first.
Yeah, and that's what Eric said today. Or Eric Walsh said that.
And it's the Spurs Arena second. And the dome is a long-term,
Yeah.
and the land bridge is a long-term.
5 to 15 years for that done.
Yeah.
For that to be done is what they said.
But here's the thing. I talked to Derek Fox about this a few days ago. And Derek's
Derek
thing
Fox is who?
is the
For people
chairman of
who
the
are-
Alamo Bowl.
Thank you.
And has been for 30 years almost. And Derek's thing was, we did our own study with Populous, the same group that did this study and these renderings. And they kept telling us, go bigger, go bigger, go bigger. And go bolder and do it all at once. You get one shot at this, put it all together and ask for the thing. Now, here's the other thing. UTSA, the city, the Spurs, the county, the taxpayer, all have to be on the same page.
Simpatico on that.
And I think that's what Eric wants is this memorandum of understanding. And Spurs are in. We saw their statement today. The county's not in yet. Peter Sakai seemed caught off guard by it.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second.
there's no who cares, right? I mean, the county got the AT&T Center in the city didn't matter. I don't know that the county has to be involved in some of this. Some of it, yes, some of it, no. And again, they made one thing perfectly clear today. The Spurs Arena will not be paid for by by city citizen tax.
That's one thing I want to get into too. Is that was abundantly clear. They said that multiple times that the $1.2 billion, or however much the Spurs Arena costs, that will not come from, at least today, as we sit here currently. That is not the plan. Is to have that come from that. But they did say the infrastructure around it, the land bridge, the parking lots,
highways,
everything else that comes along next to it. So
It's semantics.
I mean, that's a great point. Usually that's how they get you. They're like, hey, look, you don't have to pay for the building. But a lot of times it's the infrastructure that goes around the main structure itself. That's the most expensive part. And it's not often revenue generating infrastructure, but it's needed infrastructure.
So yeah, it's a semantics thing. Maybe not the brick that builds the Spurs Arena won't come from the taxpayer, but the pavement that goes around the Spurs Arena, that could be from the taxpayer. So that was a semantics thing kind of.
And one thing that they didn't talk about at all was the Spurs contribution today, which I found odd because I think both the Spurs would come in with a lower number than the city, but I do think they're expecting the Spurs to pay upwards of $500 million for their portion. I think the Spurs are coming in maybe thinking we'll pay 250. I think there's a lot of negotiating to go on between now and then. But the Spurs are going to put in a considerable chunk for their portion of the arena.
And they've also gathered different investors to help bolster their financial portfolio as well. So it's almost like they've been not saving for this, but looking forward to something of this nature.
Keep in mind, anytime you're talking about a project like this, we're talking about the investor. Everyone's looking for, you got to have some kind of return. In this case, the return is going to be the venue, the ticket sales, and all that. Is there going to be enough money there to justify it? I would argue that if there was enough money there, they would not be asking for taxpayer dollars. They would not be asking for the city, for the county, all these different taxing entities to participate.
But that's one of the main questions I think we all have is, how does it get paid for? We saw a whole slide, a whole presentation on the avenues that they can go down to kind of pay for this thing. Just running through them quickly. Just general obligation bonds, hotel occupancy taxes. I wrote them down because there's no way I was going to remember this. Bexar County venue tax, increase in property tax revenue from tax increment reinvestment zone, tax credits, private development, philanthropy.
Now, that's one thing that he mentioned, the tax reinvestment zone, the TERS, the TIF, all that. Everyone says, oh, look, it's just the taxes from within the district. You create a district and you say, all right, the tax value that goes up in here will go to service the debt. But when people say that, they don't realize, like, wait a minute. So those taxes that would have gone to general fund, that would have gone to pay for all the general city stuff, now they're being captured. So it's just like a tax increase, right? So anytime they try to sell you on the concept that, oh, look, it's just the district itself paying for itself, that's not true. Because that's revenue that's now not going to the general fund that the residents have to make up or the citizens have to make up for.
Financing zones. It's a bunch of stuff that I'm not smart enough to understand, but it's a lot of stuff that they haven't worked out yet either. The feasibility studies aren't done. The funding models aren't done. Designs for these buildings aren't done. The whole kind of rendering that we saw, that's not going to be how this ultimately ends up looking like. It's really just for everyone's mind. Like, this is what we're thinking. And so there's so much other work that needs to be done that all of the blow up in this right now is kind of confusing just because we're now seeing it for the first time. I think that's why everyone's reacting to it. But there's so much other work that needs to be done on this, Chuck.
Well, indeed. I mean, obviously some of this, including details, was news to a lot of us yesterday when we were hearing some of the details. I mean, the fact to me that the Alamo Dome is such a huge component in the overall price tag for all of this. I mean, the way it was told to me is that the Spurs Arena and all the renovations that are supposed to be done to the Alamo Dome, which include gutting the entire inside, leaving the outside structure intact, and then redoing the parking lots. But that's $2.6 billion of the overall price tag just for the Alamo Dome and the proposed Spurs Arena alone. So, again, there are so many moving parts. Matt, my concern with all of this is because all of this is so new and not really being able to, I feel like, weigh in on one side or the other because of there's so many nebulous things or moving parts that we don't have any idea are in play here. And then how quickly do they take, if there is going to be an ask, which I'm going to assume that there will be at some point, that they're going to have to take this to the taxpayer, how quickly is this going to end up on a ballot? And then it's up to the Bexar County voters to decide if they're going to fund this or not. And from what I'm hearing, it's the infrastructure, or is what they're calling it. From what I understand, the move as we sit here today is to try to get this on the May ballot. So this is coming quickly. And so I think it's up to all of us to try to figure out, okay, how best do we get more information? What does this look like? And then give it to the public so that they can make a good decision when they go.
And that'd be the scary thing is if they try to get on the May ballot without any details, they're essentially going to be asking for a blank check. And that's why I think they unveiled this vision. Get everyone excited, say, hey, look, this is grand vision. We're going to fill in the details. But let's go ahead and authorize us to issue debt just based on the vision. And again, that's going to give them the blank check, which might be cause for concern.
If they have to go to the ballot box as early as May.
Eric said something to the effect that the work starts tomorrow on finding funding sources and getting and continuing the feasibility studies and all that stuff. So, Don, I know you have a take on that.
I don't, until we know what funding models will be used, I don't know that there will be an ask from the public with a ballot initiative yet. Like the TERS tax. You don't go to the voters for that. You just do it.
Lori Houston brought that up today, that if it does get to that point, they will go to the.
I don't know if it'll be May though, because they said the pieces of it are going to, they're going to bring.
So you're talking about infrastructure.
Yes, but I mean, you're going to, whether you call it infrastructure or whether it's technically building the buildings or not, there's going to be an ask. That's the belief at some point to go to the taxpayers. What that figure looks like, if it's a half cent tax, a quarter cent, I don't know, whatever that is, there's going to be something on a ballot that asks the voting public to support this $3 to $4 billion.
And how do you think that will be perceived?
I don't know.
I mean, you've seen the dome be built. You've seen AT&T Center be built.
I don't think they're going to ask for taxes to be. I don't think they're going to go to the voter for a ballot to support a $3 or $4 billion project because it's 9 different projects. The voter might be asked to support the Alamo Dome in 15 years or in 10 years, but
You see, and to me, that's the problem is, and I've been involved in local government. That's the big challenge is what they'll do is they'll break up all these projects into a bunch of small projects and they'll ask for funding on each one. And I think a lot of times voters just push back and say, hey, look, just tell us what the final bill is going to be. Don't piecemeal it, right? Anything else, anytime you're trying to get anything, you want to do it little by little. And what this guy's saying right here, I would have concern. I would want to know what's the final cost on all this. Because then they get you with, hey, we're like halfway into this development. The city has to fund the other half. Otherwise, we have a half finished project.
they're not going to be asked to support the Spurs arena.
Well, that was what I was going to say. Is they made it clear today as well that they're going to come, as if each feasibility study is done for each project, they're going to come back to the council and they're going to show everybody what those things were. How much is it going to cost? How is this going to be done? And they're going to figure out the cost or the funding models at that point. So for the convention center first, December 4th is when we're going to figure out the convention center, what the feasibility study is for that, how much that's going to cost.
I would argue that they would have to. No arena makes sense if just the team tickets and all the revenue support it. I mean, let's just look at the numbers. So here, over the last 5 years, San Antonio Spurs annual revenues have varied, recently estimated at $285 million per year. That's not enough margin to cover debt service, cover profit margins, and make enough of a return for all these different investors. They have to ask the citizens. They're going to come to the citizens. It's just the numbers don't work out. For the 2023-24 season, the Spurs are projected to generate $197 million in ticket sales. Is that down, or is this including more than just ticket sales? I'm not sure. The Spurs have a substantial economic impact on San Antonio. A recent analysis estimates their annual contribution to the local economy, $696 million. That's like the broadest net that they cast and say, hey, this is how much the value is. We already saw what the debt service was. Debt service is close to $500 million. If they did everything in today's dollars, which they're not, right? Because they're going to start building year 2 and year 3 and year 4.
All of those things. We're going to figure that
Do you
December
think
4th.
they asked for this whole thing?
They're not going to ask.
Do you think they pitched this whole thing to just hope to get one part of it or two parts of it?
Maybe they did. Maybe all 9 parts don't end up getting done. Maybe they aren't able
Oh, I
to
bet they don't.
do the auditorium.
Or
Or
right now that all 9 parts don't get
maybe they don't. I think the major ones, like you said before, Spurs Arena, Land Bridge to connect to those two things, I think is a huge one. The Alamo Dome is one because they're not getting butt kiss if they don't do something with the Alamo Dome in the convention center. The hotel, I don't know if that's going to be a thing that they end up doing. The UTSA Health Services Center, Health Science Center, whatever that ended up being.
Hospitality.
That I think will end up being done because ITC belongs to UTSA, and the city ain't getting it unless UTSA gets their back scratched too.
Yeah,
so
that's their trade-off.
I don't know how to answer your question though about, what do I think the taxpayer is going to do? I mean, it's hard to know, right? In '99, when they were pushing this, there were a lot of elements in play. I mean, the Spurs, although they weren't making it public that this was going to happen, they were going to move if they didn't get a new building.
Right.
That was what was going to happen. There were 7 cities that were on the table that were willing to bring them in and make them a part of their community. The Spurs did not ever play that card publicly, and I credit them for that. Instead, they went out and won a championship, and I don't remember there being any pushback at all. Now, I'm not saying that my scope or my bubble is,
No, that thing passed overwhelmingly.
I mean, it was, why would you want your team to, and I remember telling people at the time, look, here's the way, I'm not telling you to vote one way or the other. It's just as simple as this. At the time, I don't know that this is the case now, but at the time, if you want the Spurs to stay here, you vote for this. If you don't want them to stay here, and you don't care, it doesn't affect you one way or the other, then vote against it. But yeah, that was an easy win. This one, I'm not sure because, again, if you look at the last 6 voting cycles, and almost every single proposition has been won, except for defund the police a couple of years ago, which narrowly lost here, I think by 3,000 votes. So the appetite for more
things.
yes, in San Antonio has been in recent history to vote these things through. So I don't blame this entity, Spurs City, everybody. If the goal is to get this on a ballot as quick as possible, I mean, that would be the thing to, where the trend has been for San Antonio.
Don, I want to ask you, I know you have to go soon. So, two things I want to get with Don before he gets out of here.
Let me say this real fast when it comes to timing. Do not think for one second that the drafting of Victor Wembanyama doesn't have anything to do with why we're talking about this now.
100%. There's going to be detractors to this. I know you're very passionate that San Antonio needs this, that this is bringing San Antonio into the new age, the modern age, making them a more modern and futuristic city, all of that. There's going to be people who say, we don't need this. What happened to the Frostbank Center on the east side? Why wasn't it developed around that? Is the same thing going to happen here? What happened to development and everything, all the money that was supposed to go to the east side that didn't? Why do the Spurs need a new arena when it's 20 years old? Give me the 1 to 2 minute synopsis of why we need this, in your opinion.
20-year-old arenas are old arenas. Oklahoma City's is newer. They're getting a new one. Dallas has a newer one. They're getting a new casino one. You got to keep up or get dropped behind. You want to be Albuquerque? You want to be El Paso? Or do you want to be San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, these major markets?
Here's another good point is you're always having, like you said, 20 years is an old arena. So when this is built, just think about it. All right. And it's going to be good for about 8 to 10 years. And then they're going to start saying, hey, this is looking pretty old. It's time for a new one. It's a never ending cycle.
Kids that move progress forward. Do we absolutely need it? Of course not. You need an NBA basketball team? No. I mean, but do you want to live in a city where you have nice things, where you have good concerts, where you have Final Fours, and you have the potential to have All-Star games and a thriving NBA championship team? I do. I want to live in a city like that. I want to move forward. Austin's moved forward. Nashville's moved forward. We've moved forward. We've done okay. Howard Peak was the mayor when we didn't do what we should have done back in 19.
Austin doesn't have an NBA team. They don't have a NFL team. They don't have a huge arena. They don't have anything like that. They do have F1 though.
29. Cindy Cryer saved us with the county. The only land they had was out there in the middle of undesirable neighborhood, I'll just say.
I mean, yeah, it's not the best part. It wasn't the best part.
Not the best part of town. And I don't think there was ever any intention of making that part of town.
Those were the promises.
Yeah, that was definitely the promises.
Those were the promises made. But I don't know that they were ever realistic. This isn't downtown. I mean, people make fun of us. People make fun of us when they come here. And they.
Well, the Alamo Dome's ugly.
No, not the Alamo Dome. The Frostbank Center.
Yeah.
When they have to drive, when NBA teams have to stay downtown and they have to drive out to this barn in the middle of nowhere. When we're on national television and they're showing Philadelphia skyline, then they come to San Antonio and they hover around the horse barns out in the middle of nowhere instead of our downtown skyline. I mean, this needs to be downtown. We need to correct the mistake that we made 20 years ago.
How do I think voters are going to feel about this? I honestly don't know, because here's some of the things that are going through my mind right now. So if we're led to, let me say this, if I'm led to believe that there's going to be a push to get this on a May ballot, and I'm pretty sure that as we sit here today, that is the plan. Well, guess what else is going to be on the May ballot at that time?
The mayoral race.
And all the city council races. So what kind of position is that going to put people running for office when this could, be a very hot buttony issue when we get closer to whatever it is that's going to happen? So, I don't know, man. There is just so much I'm willing to learn and listen to try to figure out how best to take all this in. Where's the vision? Who stands to benefit from all this? Not just the consumer, obviously, that's paying ticket prices to go watch a concert or a ball game, but like who is making the money long-term out of all this? There's just a lot of questions I have. The infrastructure, how's that ultimately going to get paid for, right?
Well,
they've been on the record saying that if it comes to that, then they would have to go to the taxpayers to get the funding. Play differently. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the AT&T Center when it was built. I didn't think that it was, a pain getting there, or, just I'm coming down 281 to just take the 35 north, easy in, easy out.
But there's no restaurants around it. There's no
I didn't know that was going to happen
Yeah.
over time, that there really wouldn't be any development, but, there's a lot of places in town where you could say that.
Right.
So, again, I'm all for.
Let's say to that point, yeah, there are no restaurants. There's not a lot of business around where the Spurs play now. And I would say that's something that the government cannot force. Obviously, businesses looked at the opportunity and said, hey, look, it's not financially beneficial. And I bring all that up just for this point is when they have these grand visions and they're going to, how everything plays out, you have to have the business community come in and say, yeah, I'm willing to invest in a business there, in a restaurant, in a bar, because I can see where the money is. If they were going to be able to print money by opening businesses next to it, they would have, but they haven't. So that's the only thing I would say is, does their new plan take that into account? Because obviously their old plans didn't.
For progress, I'm all for thinking big and moving us in the direction of taking us from where we are now to somewhere else. I think the fascinating thing for me is that in other cities, it's been my observation that if you have Fortune 5 companies, and a lot of them, Fortune 500 companies, that stuff like this comes with that, right? Eventually, this is the stuff that you get to go along with it, And sometimes, though, is it going to be a case now where sports and entertainment is what's driving Fortune 500 companies to come to your city? I don't know. I don't know how this. I'm not much of a city planner or a visionary to know, or a data analyst that can look at these things and go, if we build this, we'll start getting all these other things. I just don't know that we're in a position to make that assessment.
Two quick things, and we'll get to some more of your.
And to me, that's the biggest argument right there is I think the city has everything in the wrong order. You don't go out and try to buy a G-Wagon if your roof is leaking at your home. No, you don't have the money to fix your roof. Don't go out and buy the G-Wagon. And that's almost what they're doing here. This whole concept that if we have all this, we're going to attract employers, large Fortune 500, like he said, it's not the way it works. Large employers like that, they care about two things, right? Infrastructure and human capital, right? Do you have educated people that I can hire? Do you have the right infrastructure? They don't care if you have a sports team. They don't. And to me, that's the biggest thing about it is you get that franchise team is almost like a trophy. It's that nice looking thing once you've done everything else in the city. Once you have your roads look amazing, your downtown is amazing, everything is great. The local people enjoy it. Then you get, the nice shiny object like a sports team. It's not the other way around. You don't get or keep an NBA team or an NFL team, and now you're going to have all these great employers come in. And the other thing on this is hospitality. Yes, it is a driver for business, but what kind of jobs are they bringing in? They're bringing in hospitality jobs. They're bringing in some of the lower wage jobs. So that, that 4 billion, 5 billion, is that the best way to leverage? If we're talking about servicing the local citizens and providing value to them, yes, sports teams are great, but I would say most of them would rather have a good paying job.
During the press conference today, they were asked two questions I thought was interesting. What if with all these feasibility studies, with all the intrigue and stuff that they're putting into this, what if something's not feasible? We're going to have to see that. If something is not physically and feasibly able to be done, we're going to have to, we being the city is going to have to take a look at that.
Guarantee they can make that feasibility study say whatever they want their politicians to say.
Like, okay, maybe we can't do this one of the 9 things on our to-do list. That's going to have to be talked about at some point. They were also asked, they being Eric Welch, Laura Houston, and Ron Nuremberg, were also asked, their timeline that they put out had construction finishing on the Spurs arena at the end of, I think it was the second quarter of 2028. They were asked by the San Antonio Express news reporter, does that mean you guys expect the Spurs to move downtown before their lease is up in 2032 from the AT&T Center? They did not have an answer for that.
Well, that's a fine question. Whoever asked that, because that stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I have her name right here. I lost it. I think it's Madison Eisler. But yeah,
she's done a good job.
She's done a very good job
reporting this every step of the way, in my opinion.
But it's very interesting to think that, like, if this is done in 2029 and 2030, are they going to then break that lease, and then it's even more ill will with the county? So that's just another,
right. I saw some things today where there are some concerns about what to do then with the Frost Bank Center at this
year-round rodeo, baby.
I'll do that too, man. I did the rodeo for the first time this year. I thought I'd play devil's advocate on some of this. Like, if you've gone downtown and just tried to hang out for a night and how expensive it is to park and how dirty it is and it's not kept up. I mean, so some of this the city can pawn off and say, well, this isn't happening because this isn't happening. Well, we've got some, I think, bigger struggles ahead in terms of cleaning ourselves up a little bit, so to speak, on, what's going on downtown before we bring in some of this other stuff. But again, maybe that's part of the broader overall conversation to all this.
Boom. I will literally say mic drop after that. I think he raised a good point. I mean, when we go downtown, there's a lot of things we could do before we get this. Before we get to the huge re-envisioning, $4 billion plus, is going to be way more than that. There's other things we can do. Other things we can do for local citizens that live in the city now. But yeah, like I said, they're pushing this for a May. It might be on a May ballot. Who knows what it is. Like I said, everything that was unveiled by the city yesterday was just renderings, with just ideas, not a lot of concrete details. So maybe between now and May, a lot more of this gets fleshed out. But again, love to hear from you in the comments. I think personally, there's better things to invest in that's going to give citizens more opportunities for employment, for recreation, than something like this. But again, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments. I'm really genuinely curious to hear if you're for it or against it. Is there something I'm totally missing? Is there something I said that you totally agree with? Just let me know in the comments. Take care. See you next time. Again, I'm Mike Gonzalez, your San Antonio realtor. We'll see you next time.